Welcome, fifth grade writers. It's Mrs. SJ here again. Except it is not morning anymore, it is the afternoon, and we are embarking on yet another week of fantasy fiction writing. Today's lesson, we're going to be focusing mostly on the element of now that we are getting a structure of our writing, how are we going to create detailed and descriptive language that really draws our readers in? And so let's, before we even dive into the teaching point, make sure that you have everything that you need with you for Writer's Workshop. You are going to need, if you are working by hand, absolutely, I want to say there's a place for writing by hand. You should be keeping all of your notes and your writing and your rough drafts in the same place if possible. If you've been using the same notebook for all of your content areas, great. Just also make sure that things are clearly labeled for you. The other thing I'm going to say is you all should have gotten your own copy of a blank fantasy fiction Google document. This is your catch-all for your writing. Now, some of you may have already started, and I know many of you have started your own Google Docs. So please, even though you might have a specific Google Doc focused just for your draft writing, copy and paste that into the one that I made for you in our Google Classroom. The other thing I'm going to say is there is a Google document for the exit ticket. Ooh, excellent. I can see Ava is saying that she has already copied and pasted, and then I'm really happy I see Quincy and Adrian are also here, so it's glad to see you guys, and there are a handful more viewers that I can tell are here as well. So back to what I was saying before, there is an additional Google Doc that is going to be shared, I believe it's shared at 1 o'clock, for our exit ticket. And really, oh, excellent. Thank you for giving me confirmation that you received it. Perfect. So let's look at this teaching point that's right above my little head, my little box right now, and read it out loud with me. I can elaborate and expand my fantasy fiction writing by using sensory details to show, not tell, the events of my story. The key phrase is show, not tell. The other key piece that I want us to focus on is sensory details. Now, you know, I blew up the teaching point so it is right above our heads and that we are going to come back and really know what is expected of us by the end of today's lesson. And, you know, for me, I wanted to use one of my teacher strategies of first, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you. Then we're going to do it together. And often the together part is either when you're working on your Google Documents, also when we're working together, you're coming to our writing small group. So today I'm going to be with writing small group A after your makerspace lesson. And, you know, these are really important times where we're going to be collectively doing the work together. But you also, once I do it, and then we do it together, you're going to take everything that we've been working on and do it on your own. And that's where your draft of your at least 10 paragraph minimum short story fantasy fiction is going to come into play. So everything we talked about last week, including our story arc and having our arc of our introduction, rising action, rising conflict, climax, and resolution, right? All of those, this is all coming together. Now we're going to kind of zoom into one of those areas of our story arc and consider, even in the introduction, think back to a book that you read that just you could close your eyes and just be there. You can pick up on every detail and you didn't even have to have your eyes open, right? We know that when we read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, there's quite a lot of sensory details. And really, I want to say this is a big point because many of us as writers, when we first started learning how to write, whether you were writing in preschool or TK or first, second, third grade, right? And I know you were writing in fourth grade too. Uh, you learn how to write by listing things off. And there's something to be said about this. I think that to be able to chronologically tell a story is an important skill. However, in fifth grade, we're now moving away from this listing things off. I have a special keyword for this. It's like a honey-do list. Now, some of you might have a honey-do list or like a grocery list, or it's like, honey, first I need you to do this. Next, I need you to do that. Then I need you to do this. And finally, I need you to finish doing this. We're not writing a honey-do list. We're not writing a grocery store list anymore. Consider, like, many of us are still in our development of writing where you're listing things off. First, my mom woke me up and told me I had to go to school. Then I got dressed and brushed my teeth and got in the car and we drove to school. And then I got to school and got out of the car and said goodbye to my mom and I kissed her and then I was at school. The end. We're not doing any of that kind of simple listing. No more are we doing that. Instead, we are considering what are the sensory details that occurred when those moments happened. And I want to read an example. We read books that are doing this. And so, I just happened to grab a book that was like right off of my shelf here. And I have this book. It's called The Thief of Always. And go ahead and write in the chat if you have read this book before or seen this book or maybe are interested in reading it. I found a section. It doesn't give anything away, but I want you to listen to this author. Oop, jumping ahead here. I want you to listen to this author and how they are describing what's happening. Okay. Now, it's going to not tell you anything. There's no spoilers. But I love this book. This is a really, there's a lot of great language in here. Okay. So, go ahead and take a minute, just sit back and listen. And if you hear a word or a phrase that is descriptive, go ahead and write it in the chat and share the phrases that really stand out to you. I'm glad you're here, Marco. Thanks for letting me know. You can type in the chat. So for my kiddos who've been typing, I'm expecting you to be supporting me and listening for those really special phrases of detailed sensory language. And really, when I think of sensory language, we think of sight, right? Our eyes, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of hearing, and sense of touch. Okay. Somewhere in the middle of these musings, he must have dozed off because he woke with a start to find that the sun was no longer dappling the ground around him. And Wendell was no longer reading at his side. He reached for his soda, but the bottle had fallen over and the scent of sweet cherry had attracted hundreds of ants. They were crawling over it and into it, many drowning for their greed. As he got to his feet, the first real breeze he'd felt since noon blew, and a leaf, its edges sere, spiraled down to land at his feet. Autumn, he murmured to himself. Until this moment, standing beneath the creaking boughs, watching the wind shake down the leaves, autumn had always seemed to him the saddest of seasons. It meant that summer was over, and the nights would be growing long and cold. But now, as the drizzle of leaves became a deluge, and the pattern of acorns and chestnuts a drumming, he laughed to see and hear its coming. By the time he was out from under the trees, he had leaves in his hair and down his back, and he was kicking them up with every racing step. So here, all the author is doing is describing our character's experience with autumn. And I first started this where he had been sleeping and he wakes up and he's like, imagine when you've woken up after a nap and you're kind of disoriented and you're taking in the scenery around you. This is what the author is writing about. You know, it's not just the sweet sense of soda, the sweet scent of soda, it's the scent of sweet cherry that attracted hundreds of ants. And it wasn't that they just, were attracted to the soda. The author even goes into it and says that many of them were drowning for their greed, right? And calling ants greedy is a really interesting thing for an author to do. It gives you a sense of like the ants like needed to do whatever it would take to get a taste of the soda. And then not even this, but looking at some of these other detailed descriptor words, right? The author doesn't just say he could hear and feel fall. The author says the drizzle of leaves, the patter of acorns and chestnuts drumming, right? He's talking about the chestnuts and acorns dropping on the ground. So this is a really great descriptive section of a book. Now what I would like for us to do is, after I read this, I want to show you this experience of doing this myself. So we're going to look at this note taker that I have, and this note taker is actually, let's see, I have to bring this forward. Okay, thank you for bearing with me as I'm editing this. This was a little technological challenge here. Ooh, thank you. Of course, when things are all formatted ahead of time, things just go wrong. That's okay. Use my breathing tool, patience tool, and we're gonna get this going. Okay. So I know you can't really see me. I'm gonna fix this in just a moment, but as I'm fixing this, let's read through these directions. Now the directions are the same on your exit ticket. However, your examples are going to be a bit different. And so in a moment, I'm going to show you what I mean. But let's read over the directions. Each given sentence is a tell where it lists. Remember, we talked about like this honey-do list of how we know what is happening, right? And really, we aren't just listing details. We want to give a very descriptive, or as descriptive as possible, so that we can really show what's happening. So in the box next to each sentence, we're going to try writing some sentences that show instead of tell, by using our sensory details and descriptions. So in your exit ticket, I completed the first one for you. And if you wanted, you may delete it. And here we go again. Thanks, guys, for being patient with me. Okay. And so now let's take a look at this example of a tell. This example of a tell. Now, here we have our a bully, right? Alex, the school bully, walked over and pushed me. This is listing what happened in many ways. And I want us to consider a few things here. We have a lot of options here. Sorry. There we go. Okay, we're in business. So here we have Alex, the school bully, walked over and pushed me. I am going to insert a row above because I want to say that this is the tell column and this is the show using sensory details and descriptions. So first I need to decide, I need to put myself in this scene. And I'm imagining that this is taking place outside on the playground. And I'm wondering if I'm imagining as my, before he pushes me or before they push me, do I hear them coming or do I see them coming first? Or do I not know that Alex is coming to push me at all? Well, I might start by saying that my face was, ooh, I think I might even go a little bit more detailed. So the sweat was dripping or rolling. I like this. It was rolling down the sides of my temples. And I was focused on the spontaneous bouncing of the Foursquare ball. That I didn't even notice what was going on around me. And then I might consider, okay, so I really want to use sensory details. Like I can feel the sweat rolling down the sides of my face. I'm focused on, I'm not just saying the bouncing. I want you to know that with Foursquare, you don't know where the ball is going to go. It bounces spontaneously. And so really I'm trying to show, not tell, I want to show that I'm distracted, right? Here, like I didn't even notice what was going on around me. I have a couple choices here. I could say, did I hear his footsteps first, or do I just feel the shove that Alex, put on to me first? So I might consider it wasn't until Alex's final two booming steps that I swiveled I might even like describe my body as a little flimsy. And I might even like my flimsy, let's say I'm 11 years old, 11-year-old body around. So I'm going to reread this. It wasn't until Alex's final two booming steps that I swiveled my flimsy 11-year-old body around, only to be, I don't know if I want to say violently shoved, but I might consider another word for violent, or maybe not violent, but maybe only to be shoves. And you know what? This is where I might actually add a simile. So hard that it was like snow falling off of, it was like snow tumbling down a mountain. So some of us are asking, is this a true story? No, this is not a true story. However, I am using some things from a time that I did get into a fight when I was in middle school. So, this particular thing did not happen to me. However, I did get into a shoving argument with somebody when I was in 6th grade that I'm not super proud of, but it was because I was standing up to a bully that had said some mean things to my friend. And so, really when I'm thinking about my own experiences, I want to think about what was my sensory experience of this. Okay, so I want to create a picture that I'm sweating, my body is flimsy because I was tired, I've been playing. I could even add in sensory details about how hot it is. But I think that this is a really great start of using sensory details. Notice that I'm just taking this like simple two things. We have Alex, he's a school bully, walked over and pushed me. And look at all of this detail that I have. Okay? Look at some of the phrases. The spontaneous bouncing of the Foursquare ball. Sweat was rolling down the sides of my temples. Okay? 2 booming steps. I might even like say booming, like really big. That I swiveled my flimsy 11-year-old body around, only to be shoved so hard that it was like snow tumbling down a mountain. So we could even work on this and consider, well, okay, how might I use this similar descriptive language in my own experience? So we're going to practice. Just like I'm practicing here, this doesn't really have much to do with my story idea, where I talk to you guys about, my character who's, it's her final year in college and she lives in Boston and it's snowy, right? It's not even sweating. So it doesn't even have to connect with your story idea. The point of this is to get so comfortable with going back in your own writing to be able to say, okay, I'm going to identify parts of the story that I've already written, and I'm going to start making this show not tell transformation. So you might, after doing this exit ticket, and remember your exit ticket's going to have a few different scenarios and situations, you're going to consider where in your introduction can you take a sentence and use our show not tell? Where in your rising action do you hear, and then I got to visit my mom after a long semester and I missed her so much? That's telling us what's happening. I want you to show us. What did the door sound like as your mom swung it open after a long business trip? What did your cheeks feel like when you were smiling super hard? There's all of these moments that are so powerful and help us understand the way that we react to certain moments. And then we can take that and translate it into our characters, into our story. So with that, I am so excited to continue reading your stories to see how things are developing. And until then, I'm going to say farewell. We've got a few more minutes for you just to take a quick break before Makerspace. And if you are in Writing Group A, I will see you soon. I see Quincy just asked, this is off topic, but do we have to do the addition exit ticket too? That is off topic. That's for math. I'll answer quickly that the one that you do is the one that counts. The second one that I posted is an extension, so it's extra credit. Anyway, that's all. That's all, folks. Keeping it short and sweet today. Made it 23 minutes, but